Hello everyone, and welcome to Fundraising Workshop number 3. Today we're going to be talking about implementing your amazing fundraising plan. So let's check in where we are on our fundraising path. So in step 1, the needs assessment stage, we talked about setting our targets and goals. We talked about our fundraising friends and allies. We talked about our why. And we started to get to know our trip inside and out. In step 2, we created a rough fundraising plan where we prioritized our fundraising activities, built our network of prospects, donors, and supporters, and learned about having credibility and transparency in our fundraising campaign. Today, we're talking about implementing our fundraising plan, which is step 3. So let's get started. So our session today on implementing our fundraising plans is going to go through the definition of a fundraising ask. We're going to break that down. In order to do so, we're going to talk about fundraising like friend-raising. So it sounds really silly, but in reality, relationships really matter. And friend-raising is just as important as fundraising when we're talking about our fundraising networks. We're going to talk about planning the ask, and we're going to talk about the ask process and actually how to get what we're asking for. To go through this, we're going to look at examples and scenarios, such as conversations and questions that may come up as you go along. We're going to go through communicating the ask clearly and things to consider when asking people for support, because we know this is a very intimidating part for a lot of fundraisers. And the number one question that we get from fundraisers is how do I ask for money? So we're going to help you get a little bit more comfortable with that. So let's talk about the ask. The definition of an ask is when you ask someone for something to go towards your fundraising goal. The something is usually money, time, or other materials of value. The fundraising ask is usually where fundraising phobia comes from, specifically the fear of asking for contributions or being told no, so the fear of rejection. But don't worry, we're going to help you go over any fundraising phobia and learn a valuable skill of how to ask for what you really want at the same time. Now, there are a lot of ways someone can ask for money, time, or materials of value, but we're going to talk about the concept of money right now. The simplest ask, but often most challenging for people, is just asking for money. Sometimes less intimidating asks can be offering a service in exchange for money. For example, I'll mow your lawn for $25. Another example is offering a promotion in exchange for money. So something like this is a sponsorship. If you give me $100, I'll wear your company logo on a t-shirt and take a photo during my trip and post those photos online after I get home, showing that you supported me. Another less intimidating ask can be selling something for money. For example, you made art or bought bulk Me to We Rafiki friend chains and you can sell them for a profit. Another is selling tickets to an event for money, and even sell things like food at that event for even more profit. Another is selling tickets to a raffle prize for money, where ideally someone donates the item that people are willing to buy tickets for. The list can go on and on, but now that we're thinking about it, to do any of these activities of fundraising, you would need to ask people to help you with these things. So this is a great way to think about it. You have a lot of people out there who can support you, so really getting started involves that ask. So now we're going to break down the ask into 3 simple parts. The first highlights relationships, pointing out that fundraising is like friend raising. Relationships do matter, and building your network and positive relationships around you is very important to fundraising. The second is planning the ask and the things to do before you approach someone about your fundraising. The third is the actual ask process and how to actually get what you want. The first step in breaking down the ask is fundraising, friend-raising, and relationships that matter. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about networking, But building a community of people who support you and your goals is extremely important to your fundraising success. Now, how do we do this? In order to build strong relationships with people, you need to stay connected with them. Spend time with them. Update people with what you're doing. And while you share with them what you're doing, make sure you take time and an interest in them as well. Ask questions. Be curious and find ways to connect, and often. We recognize that your window of time for fundraising is short, but consider some of the following important fundraising ideas. Is this your first contact with someone or with an organization? Figure out if it makes sense to ask for money right off the bat. Can you ask for something other than money? Can you ask for advice? How about asking for help with one of your fundraising events or ideas? Do they have the skills they can help you with? Can you ask them for time, maybe to attend an event that you're running? Can you ask them for introductions to other people? Think of ways you can build relationships with someone. Can you add them to a monthly newsletter that you've created? Can you add them to a blog that you're writing? Think of ways where you can stay in contact with them and bring them into your community. If a person or organization is used to having people ask them for money or has specific money set aside for what you're asking for example, scholarships, funds for community service, funds for travel, think of ways you can stand out in your approach. How can you build relationships to make your connections more personal? Consider the ideas above and send photos, stories, and updates leading up to the trip and after the trip. Send handwritten notes and cards. They're really lovely and people love to receive them. Offer to do a pre-trip presentation about your fundraising effort strategies, about your trip, about your experiences, and your action plan for when you return from your trip. The second step in breaking down the ask is pre-planning your ask. Now, this is really important because it will help give you the confidence you need to have the conversations that you'll have in this part of the fundraising process. So to start pre-planning your ask, you want to decide who you're asking. So to do this, you might want to go back to the template and the notes that you made in the second workshop, where you were considering your network of potential prospects, donors, and supporters. So now, let's think about who you're asking. Is it an individual? Is it a company? Maybe a community organization? How about a local store or a small business in your community? Maybe it's a larger store or a corporation or a large business. Maybe it's a school or a team. What about for those businesses, community organizations, and teams? Who is the right person to talk to at each of these places? These are all things to think about at this stage of the game. The next step is to decide what you're asking for and what specifically you're looking for from each person. So if it's money, how much? Do you have a minimum amount that you're willing to take? Do you want to ask for increments, $25, $50, $100 donations? Are you asking them to buy something from you? Perhaps you're selling Rafikis or something that you've created. Are you asking them to attend an event that you'll be hosting? Maybe to help you with the event setup, takedown, to help you sell tickets, other event duties, etc. Maybe you're asking to help for their help to pay you money in exchange for a service. Maybe you're just asking for their help to be a part of your fundraising support network. Can they help you fundraise at their workplace? Can they help fundraise via their networks, their family, their friends, their social media, etc.? So all of these things are really important things to consider at this part of the pre-planning phase, before you go into the conversations with potential supporters. The actual ask process is one of the things that makes most fundraisers nervous. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it down in detail to make it easy and manageable. Step 1, we're going to talk about breaking the ice. Step 2, it's making a transition. Step 3 is making a personalized connection with the person that you're asking. Step 4, providing information. Step 5 is making them understand why you need what you're asking for. Step 6 is making the ask. We're going to go into detail here and go through an example. And lastly, step 7 is the thank you and follow-up. So let's go into this in more detail. So step 1 is breaking the ice. And this is where you focus on relationship building and the getting to know you types of conversations. You've likely heard of this reference to as small talk, and though small, it can often be the most important stages of a relationship. So why is small talk important? Because it gives a chance for someone to learn more about you, find commonalities between you, and build trust in your credibility. If someone appears to be busy, only stay on step 1 for a few quick second questions and move on to the next step. You'll want to respect people's time. So here's some breaking the ice conversation topics that you can use. So what things do you know about this person and what can you ask them about? Their family, maybe their interests? How about what they did on the weekend? What have they been up to since the last time you saw them? Those are some of the common ideas that you can start with. Step 2 is making the transition. A transition is the move from breaking the ice into talking about why you're there. People want you to make that transition. They know it's coming, so just go for it. Don't linger too long on step 1. You want to make the transition whenever possible, since you are the person making the ask. You need to try and control the flow of the conversation, and transition can help you do that. The best and smoothest and least awkward transitions are based on relevancy. So here's some examples of ways that you can make that transition. How about, I'm so glad that we're able to meet today and spend some time talking about, you can add in whatever you're fundraising for here. In this case, it's going to be your trip or your experience abroad. How about, listen, I wanted to talk to you about something very important. You can then segue into talking a little bit more about why your trip or experience is going to be very important for you. Another example would be, the reason why I wanted to talk to you today is because I'm looking for some support in this aspect of my fundraising initiative. So that's a great way to transition as well. Another, how about, I want to tell you about my plans for the summer and how I think you might be able to help. That's a really great way because you're already asking there right in the sentence. You could be more direct and go with something like, Joe, I need your help with something. Then you could segue into what exactly you're looking for help with. Help with an event, help with a financial donation. So this is a great way to transition as well. Could also be more detailed and start with something like, you know how I care about giving back to the world. Well, my plan this summer is going to help me do that even more. You can then really dive into what this trip or experience is going to help you do, becoming a leader and actually really diving into sustainable solutions for development and all of the things that you plan on doing throughout your trip. So whatever your transition is going to be, make it relevant to the conversation and what you know about that person and what connection that you've already built with them. So in step 3, you're going to want to continue making that personal connection. So after your transition that takes the conversation to a more serious and direct place, try to connect the conversation to the interests or priorities of the person that you're talking to. Think of it this way. Does the person or organization that you're talking to, are they a part of anything that they have in common with the themes connected to your fundraising cause? For example, making a positive difference in the world or doing good, making things better around you. Are they an organization that is committed to that? Maybe you can connect on that. Maybe they're an organization that provides volunteer work or getting volunteer hours, so you can connect on that as well. Maybe they're an international development organization and you can connect on things like access to education, healthcare, water, sanitation, food security and agriculture, and income sources. Maybe they're a community organization and they're passionate about community development, and that's something that you can connect on as part of your action plan for when you come home. Maybe it's community building, and you can share all of the things that you plan on doing overseas as part of your community building projects. Maybe it's learning a new language. Maybe they're passionate about culture, and you can share how you're passionate about that as well, and you're looking to experience that with this trip. Maybe it's seeing new places, gaining a new perspective, and that's something that they share with you as well. Maybe it's the cultural understanding of where you're specifically traveling. Perhaps it's human rights, that's something that you can also share. And leadership skill development. Maybe they're passionate about providing youth the opportunities to further develop their leadership skills. Step 4 of the ask is all about giving them the information that they'll need to decide whether or not they can support you or not. The type of information you want to give to people here is telling them why you want to go on this trip or experience and what a Me to We trip is all about. You've probably heard of this before, referred to as the pitch. This is where everything you learned in the first workshop will come in handy, where we developed our why. We want to talk about why we're going on the trip and why it's important to us. Talk about the trip and what we're going to be doing there. Here are some suggestions for ways that you can start having this discussion. Connect your speaking points to your why. Talk about the things that you are most excited to do on the trip and why you're excited to do them. A simple example could be, I'm planning on traveling to Kenya this summer with a volunteer program, and I'm fundraising for the cost of this trip. You could also add components to your explanation that matter most to you. For example, you could do the same thing as this. I'm planning on traveling to Kenya this summer to participate in the volunteer programs with other young people who want to make a difference in the world, and I'm fundraising for part of the cost of the trip. Review your Step 1 needs assessment notes in the fundraising plan template that you made, and review the talking points you want to focus on. Pick a few that best capture your why and be ready to elaborate on each with your own words. We'll go over a few more examples when we go over the scenario later on in this workshop. In step 5, we're going to work hard at making them understand why we want to go. We want to tell people exactly what we're doing. Tell them how much fun we're having and what some examples of how we can do this. The cost of the flight, plus the other costs like accommodation, vaccination, travel, and then fundraising total amount. Another example, though I have some money put in the bank and support from my family, I still want to fundraise for this trip. I think fundraising for this experience will make it more meaningful, so that's why I'm doing it. My fundraising goal is blank. Another way to get this message across is by saying something like, I believe in the work of Free the Children in need, so fundraising means I can spread awareness about their work while also trying to help the I need trip. So these are ways that you can express how they can support you and why they need to support you. Step 6 in the ask is making the ask. Be sure to ask a direct question, and consider asking for something concrete and specific versus asking for any amount of money, some time, or a type of valued material, etc. Concrete and specific ask strategies could include asking for contributions in increments of $25, $50, or $100 or other. Consider what you're willing to do for each amount of donation. For example, for $50, I'll wear your company's t-shirt on the trip and take photos to post on my Facebook. And for $100, I'll come to your group and do a workshop and presentation about my implemented plan. Consider ways to connect a donation with a specific cost of the trip. Like I'm raising $2,000 to cover my flight costs for the trip, and your contribution will go towards that cost. What about I'm raising money to cover the program costs of the trip? So that includes things like the leadership skill training I'll get, all of my food, accommodations, and travel costs once I'm in Kenya. Ask 3 times. You don't have to ask the second and third time at the same place, but find a way to ask again. And keep trying. If after the third time they decline, then you can move on. The seventh and final step in the ask is the thank you and follow-up. To wrap up, summarize the conversation in key takeaways for you and the person or people that you're talking with. Thank the person for their time and consideration and contribution if you get one right away. If they say no, that's okay. Thank them for their time and consideration anyways. Ask them for feedback on your presentation or conversation. Ask them to tell you why they won't be supporting you. Maybe you can learn something for the next time or future conversations. If they can't give you what you asked for, maybe you can ask them for something else. Let's say you asked for money and they said no. Can you ask them for an in-kind donation, their time, materials, advice? Figure out what your follow-up should look like and always write a personalized note, card, or email after your face-to-face conversations and meetings. Remember, if they say no, that's okay. You're always going to want to thank them for their time and consideration. This will help you down the road. In part 2 of this workshop, we're going to go through an example of an ask scenario. Now, the ask process and the 7 steps might seem complicated, but trust me, they're not that hard. Once you practice it a few times, you'll get the swing of it and be able to improve your asking skills, not just for fundraising, but for everything you need to ask for. To help you with this, we're going to go through an example of what a trip fundraising ask might look like. So let's set the stage. So let's set the stage for our example. Let's say we're using second-degree prospects, our neighbors, Smith family down the street. Why are they second-degree prospects? Well, we've known them for years, we say hello often, but we don't know a whole lot about them. You last chatted with them at a family summer garden party where you learned their daughter is studying international development in university. Here we go. Let's practice our ask. Step 1. Breaking the ice. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. How are you? How have you been since the last time I saw you? How is your daughter enjoying university? Is she still studying international relations? Here, we're making a connection and building on a relationship that we've already have. Step 2. Making the transition. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, there is a reason why I wanted to talk to you today. Here, we're transitioning into a serious part of the conversation. Step 3. Making the connection. Like your daughter, I'm really interested in learning about what's going on around the world. So that's why, this summer, I'm going to go on a Me2E volunteer trip to Ecuador. So this is where you connect your story with theirs. In step 4, we give them the information. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the trip leaves in July, and I'll bring together other youth just like me who want to make a positive difference in the world. I've never traveled to Ecuador before, And I believe that's the only way I can learn about a culture is by working side by side with community members to make a difference altogether. So this is where you're presenting them with your why. Let's go over a few more examples that you can use to help you give them the information that they'll need in order to help support you. Learning more and telling them more about a Me to Eat trip and what it's all about is very helpful. You can talk about how you'll be making a difference. So things that you could say are, we will volunteer with a local community, supporting local families and projects that strive to end the cycle of poverty and create sustainable change. So the most common volunteer projects on a Me to Eat trip would be physically building a school or projects connected to helping people gain access to water, food, healthcare, or income generation. So this is a great way to share information about what you'll be doing and the difference that you'll be making. Relationship building with local community. While on this trip, talk about how you'll be spending time with the local communities and learning directly from them about their lives. You'll be working side by side on the projects and walking in the footsteps of community members, learning their stories and understanding their culture through the eyes and experiences of them. So here's another way to give them some more information. You can talk about learning by doing and how you'll be learning by doing. For example, in the Amazon, you'll help a local farming family collect water from the closest water source, helping you understand the importance of having access to water. Sometimes the best way to learn is by doing, sometimes with your hands and putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Talk about education and the educational impact that you'll be having. So you can say, well, we will be spending time studying social issues in Ecuador and possible solutions to these issues. I've already learned that Ecuador's indigenous people, Quechua, are the most in need of support in the country. Almost 29% of Ecuador's population lives below the poverty line, but 55% of Ecuador's indigenous population lives in poverty. You'll be studying issues like this and learning about solutions and the statistics like this. So these are kind of talking points for you to get started with a potential donor. You could also talk about your leadership skills development. You could say, I feel frustrated learning about how unfair the world is sometimes, and sometimes I don't know what I could do to make it better. So that's why this Me to Eat trip program is designed to help me develop my leadership skills. Leadership skills training workshops include public speaking, effective communication, and leadership for social change. You can make the information compelling by talking about how you're going to continue to make a difference when you get home. You can say, I'll continue to develop my very own action plan for how I can continue to make positive changes once I come home from the trip. So it's more than just a 2-week trip. It's learning how to be a leader and make change in your own community when you get home. You can talk to them how you're joining a network and community of youth doing good. Because Me to Eat trips are designed to build community with group members so that you can create a safe space of support on the trip and continue to support each other when you home. What's more, you know that there are thousands of youth who are involved in these children, and you're part of this community of young people doing good in the world. So, here you go with a bunch of ideas on how to present the information. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I am fundraising for the entire cost of my trip. My goal is to fundraise the entire $5,000 over the course of the next 5 months. I have already raised $1,000, but I need $4,000 more to help me reach my goals. Here is where you're making them understand why you need what you're asking for. Next, would you be willing to contribute $50 to help me reach my goal? This is the ask. And after you've presented such amazing information, it makes the ask part a lot more easier. And now that you're comfortable, you can ask if they have any odd jobs or chores, like painting, cleaning the garage, cleaning out the yard, fixing a broken appliance, running shopping errands, etc., that you can do around their household in exchange for maybe $100 to help reach your goal. And because you've presented this information again, this is really connecting them to the cause. At the end of your conversation with the Smiths, make sure you thank them for their time and contribution to your trip this summer. Tell them that you'll be in touch soon and perhaps add them to your blog and keep them updated on your trip experience by sending your photos and stories when you return. The thank you and follow-up is very important. Now, we're going to focus on an activity. We'll help you practice the ask. So what I want you to do is go through the 3 steps that we broke down before. First one being relationships matter. Remember when we were talking about fundraising? So write down all the ways that you want to build your fundraising community. Next, for the planning the ask section, look at your fundraising plan and figure out what kind of asks you need to make. Decide who you're asking and what you're asking them for. For the third portion, the ask process, how to actually ask what you want. This is the 7 steps we went over before. Pick one of your most important and timely asks. What's an ask that you need to make now to set more things in motion for your fundraising plan? Write down what you want to say at each step of the ask process and make it into a script. Practice your script with someone who can role play with the ask situation. Get them to give you some feedback. To sum up your homework, as part of your fundraising process, write out a script for yourself. Find someone to practice with you and give you feedback. Consider your fundraising mentor, a family member, a friend, a teacher, even your pet or the mirror. The point is, just practice. The only way you'll become more comfortable with all of this is if you try it. Obviously, the ask scenario we went through together is a simplified version of what it might be in reality, but we wanted to show you what a conversation could look like. In reality, people will want to ask you lots of questions throughout your conversation, so the outline here is showing you the steps that you should follow in making on an ask. But nothing beats knowing your stuff, so make sure you're ready to explain why you want to go on a trip, what a trip is all about, and how someone can help you. The simple outline will help you the most. The other workshops and fundraising topics and skill sessions will help you with your conversations. And guess what? You've heard it before. Practice makes perfect. Don't wait to start practicing these steps. Start now. It's the only way you'll get better, more comfortable, and confident in talking about these things. In part 3 of this workshop, we're going to be talking about communicating the ask. Beyond the steps, what else should you be thinking about when asking people to help you reach your fundraising goals? We're going to talk about attitude and how you should go into your meetings. We're going to talk about body language. We're going to make you realize voice does matter. And lastly, we're going to talk about the content of your fundraising ask. Some things to consider when communicating the ask. For the entire process, make sure you're authentic and genuine, and just be yourself. Feel free to compliment your prospects, but only if it's genuine. Confidence displayed through body language helps. Communication isn't just what you say. Research studies show that the first impression, especially, are communicated in the following ways. 55% appearance and body language. 38% is the tone of voice. And only 7% is actually what you say. So of all the impressions that you make, appearance, body language, tone of voice is really important, even more important than what you have to say. So what can we learn from this in how we approach the ask? For attitude, we want to make sure that we go into every conversation expecting a yes. We want to keep it positive. If we get a no, consider it a no for now. See it as a learning opportunity. Body language. We want to go into all our meetings acting confidently. How do we do this? Practice. Smile. Make eye contact. Sit and stand tall. Bad posture can communicate a lack of confidence. If you're sitting, lean forward in your seat for the ask. If you're standing, stand comfortably, close to the person for the ask, but not too close. Keep your body language open. Don't cross your arms and don't cross your legs. Voice matters. Take a deep breath before you talk to someone on the phone or in person. Pay attention to the speed of your voice. Speak at a slower pace that you might normally do. If your voice inflects to a higher pitch at the end of your sentence, like you're asking a question, you may not sound so confident. It might sound like everything is a question, so be careful of this. Make sure that you smile. For the content of your ask, this is the portion of what you say. Now, if you're delivering your story in person, make sure you have your back pocket story. Think of stories, statistics, and talking points as something you can draw on if you need from your virtual back pocket. So you can go into conversations with your back pocket full of ideas from the webinars, topics and skill sessions, conversations that you've had. This will be your few words describing what you're asking for. Think about sending a follow-up email, letter, or handwritten card to thank them for their time if you're visiting in person. Think about sending videos, photos, and other personalized ways to say thank you to your prospects, donors, and supporters. If you're asking on the phone, have your script in front of you, especially for your first few phone calls. You don't have to go off the script, but it helps to have an agenda of what you want to cover in front of you. If you're asking in written form, take a look at some other sample letters other youth have used in making fundraising asks. Consider the steps to the ask and how you communicate over letter form, email, and social media. Consider including video links, maybe even a video of you talking about your why, photos, and other information you think would be relevant to give your ask credibility and those you're asking for money from. So some important takeaways from this workshop on implementing our fundraising plan was all about the ask, developing our ask script. We want to make sure that the script includes the 7 steps that we outlined before. We want to practice our ask with friends and family members. And we want to make a list of prospects to pitch our ask to and start reaching out. Does this make everybody excited for their ask? I hope so. We hope that you're ready to implement your amazing fundraising plan with the ask and the confidence that you've developed through this workshop. Here are some steps to success. Reread Phase 3 workbook. Complete the workbook activities and develop your script. Reach out if you have any questions at all. You can reach me at amanda.zamperin@me2we.com or add me to Facebook, where every Friday I post a fresh fundraising idea that you can insert into your plans. Thank you so much for joining us for Phase 3 workshop. We hope this is helpful. Happy fundraising.